see they get finished off. Leave no witness out of all this chaos are out in the distance with the hemlock from the care package in the hands of Pyrrhus.
Perfect wall, perfect seer ultimate as well. Vicky, you highlighted them before, and it looks like they're on the verge of picking up a dub. So healthy, triple red armor. Only force remains from Team Aegon by AOC, and there it is. A new champion in the arena. It's Leave No Witness, picking up a massive win in game number 5.
Huge, it was just a matter of time. That's why I highlighted this team. They were popping off. Their individual skill is next level.
Dude, Leave No Witness, I think, is the best name in Apex Legends. Leave No Witness is crazy, bro. I love that name, man.
Hey, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy Q, and we reached that halfway point for most of the regions here in ALGS Split 2. And in case you're new here, what up? We talk a lot of ALGS over on this channel, not just NA and EU like a lot of my American creator friends, but I do try and cover a little bit of every region, including doing some work actually in the South American region, trying to do some English coverage on game day itself. And today, I actually get the chance to sit down with the co-CEO of Leave No Witness, a top 5 team in the South American region, probably one of the top teams, I would say, even just consistently. One of the top 5, though, that did represent the region at LAN in Split 1 playoffs, and also currently sitting in 4th for Split 2 thus far. Admittedly, a little bit of a rough start with that first session for the team, but able to follow it up with 3 top 4 finishes. And they're actually celebrating 2 years of operations, I do believe, today, if Twitter told me right. Definitely a huge step for you guys. John, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing absolutely lovely, Q. Thank you for asking.
So let's get things started off here actually with one of my favorite portions of our segments here. It's our Tell Us What's Up, sponsored by Ulti Supp. And speaking of which, YouTube Ulti Supp has the only ingredients clinically tested and proven to increase performance in gamers, backed with a completely transparent label with properly dosed ingredients so you know exactly what you're putting in your body. And on that label, you'll find nothing unhealthy and 0 sugar. If you ask me, it's probably the best blue raspberry on the market, but that's going to be for you guys to decide. Link is always down in that description below. And don't forget to check out code YoBoyCue, saves you that 10%. All right. Now, John, as I had mentioned, the squad is currently sitting inside that qualification line for LAN, right? But there are a few teams sitting in that standings right now, right behind you, that could potentially knock y'all outside of that line come this next session, which will be here in a few weeks because we do have this slight break from ALGS. But to be honest, the squad always seems most comfortable in that like underdog kind of like come from behind role. I mean, we saw last split team was like, I think it was 14th, middle of the pack, halfway through the split, and still came back and qualified for LAN, and in a region that only has 5 slots nonetheless. Let's not forget that, right? Obviously, you know, and even actually, I think thinking back further than that, y'all did something similar in the second half of last year, just unfortunately fell just a bit short, but you always kind of seem to be in this come from behind mode, right? And we did see a lot of changes come in seasons, this last season, which is, I think for some teams, it's taken them a little bit longer to kind of adjust to the new meta. Maybe not so much in South America, but we have seen some teams that did very, very well last split, struggling to kind of get into things in Split 2, thinking of teams like TSM, Ironblood Gaming, and NA and APAC South respectively. But I'm kind of curious, as far as for you guys over at Leave No Witness, John, with the early parts of the split, what was it that seemed to give this squad a little trouble? Is it just kind of getting back into the swing of things for ALGS, knowing especially there's not necessarily the most opportunities for teams in the South American region to kind of keep that skill set sharp with those like third-party tournaments, you know? Or is it just maybe one of those situations where the team really does just truly play a little bit better under that pressure once they kind of have to kick things into high gear there?
So actually, between Split 1 and Split 2, we actually did a roster change, right? And so with that roster change that we actually did, it actually pretty much gave us a brand new fresh start, a blank state for us to be able to start with talent that we know is, of course, competent, right?
Right.
Actually, with the new roster that currently consists of Pyrrhus, Brutus, and Kurev, Pyrrhus was actually one of our first members of Leave No Witness when we had initially opened operations, pretty much give or take 2 years ago. And, you know, as you had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast today, today would actually be the 2-year anniversary for Leave No Witness.
Okay.
So, you know, it's kind of just like the stars aligning where we're bringing back like these old stars, these old faces. And, you know, the roster was actually very, very consistent during the last split of the Pro League. You know, that roster, which was formerly Monterrey Esports, that we picked up, you know, they had placed 7th, and they had only placed 7th out of a very, very, very tiny margin.
Yeah.
And they were they were pretty much just as ready to go to land just as much as the previous roster. Now, of course, with like talking about the whole you know, slow starts and whatnot,
Mhm.
I wouldn't quite say that it takes a longer time for South America as a region to adapt,
Right.
because all of us are very, very competent. You know, internationally, Brazilians are known to be the best gamers in the world, and
A lot
Valorant
of passion.
specifically,
True. Yeah.
Chileans, right?
Yeah.
A lot of passions. You know, if you to look at Valorant, for example, Argentinians, Chileans, Brazilians, um, you know, it's a they're very, very competent players, and so that would also remain true into Apex Legends scene. Um, if anything, I find that during the international LAN events here, they haven't necessarily been the most representative of what the teams from SA is capable of doing.
I would
But
100%
I
agree.
would,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you know, I would credit that a lot to just simply the circumstances that we are under in South America, right? During our first game day for Split 2, we did have a very, very slow start where we had placed 12th, but you know, every single game day that we've had up and well, since then, we've been taking second and 1/4 place. That was
Mhm.
just slightly a little bit more unfortunate in this most recent Saturday. But you know, we've been staying in that top 4 pretty much every single game day since day one. Uh, so you know, of course, we are feeling that sort of point disadvantage we had gotten from day one, because of course there are people right behind us in the
Right.
in the
Right.
points. But you know, with this new roster, I'm definitely feeling like consistency is much more it's consistency is there, right? You know,
Okay.
it's not a fluke that we take these second place placements every single Saturday. It's
Right.
not a
Throwing up
fluke that,
71
you
points
know,
isn't an out like an outlier necessarily.
exactly, right?
Right.
And so it's just one of those things where, you know, of course it's a brand new meta of the game, you
Mhm.
know, for South America specifically, because we unfortunately aren't known for having the most professional scrims, a lot of the players actually need to watch the other regions to be
Mm.
able to adapt and understand the play style. So, you know, to that respect, Q, I'd really just say that, you know, we are quite simply built different, and we're able we're able to play when it counts.
Cool. Cool. I mean, and at the end of the day, that's what most matters, right? Because even if you get to playoffs when you get to where you want to be, which is grand finals, you need to be able to perform, not just getting kills, but at the end of the day, you need to win at least one game, right? So
Exactly.
definitely understandable. So I know when I got the chance to chat with Pocus over here on the channel from Team Singularity, for those of you guys watching who may not know, I know you know, John, but the guy who does the Portuguese broadcast for the region. I know one of the things that, you know, kind of got brought up was the unique play style of the region. And I got to agree, especially as someone who does, as I mentioned previously, you know, I watch a lot of every region. I love the fact that, especially when you watch South America, it's not like I see 1 or 2 contests right off rip and then I'm waiting 3 or 4 rings for a fight. You know what I mean? Like, I like that you do see those teams that don't mind taking the risks in order to go for the frags, right? But I
Yeah.
do got to ask a question, though, because I would imagine, you know, as for a team knowing that the region play is kind of a different pace, you kind of have to find a way to balance that, right? Because it seems that aggressive play style seems required almost in order to just place in that top 4 automatic land bids, right? It's kind of hard to just simply sit back and play zone because you have so many other teams that are going to be happy with taking those fights, right? But obviously, you also have to kind of take that time to get the practice for that more slow, deliberate play style for when the team does inevitably get to land, right? So I guess what are some of the things that you've kind of found that helps maintain that balance, right? I know we've been seeing recently a couple more of the South American teams in some of the more third party like tournaments, esports arena, stuff like that. I'm sure that obviously helps even if you're fighting through tough ping, but more so, what are the things that you feel like the squad has to really focus on to make sure that they are revved up come land time?
You know, honestly, at such a high level of play, Q, I can't even say it's aim training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, you could take any single one of these players out of this pro league, out of any pro league, out of any region, and you could very much, you know, chalk it up to the fact that they all have a fairly consistent amount of aim percentages. They all are able to hit their shots.
Right,
They
right, right.
hit when it counts, right? So I wouldn't even necessarily say I have to be good at the game. Truth be told, it really just chalks up to, are you able to remain cool-headed? Are you able to remain calm? Are you smart enough? And did you do your homework?
Mm.
Um, because for the people that don't do their homework and they just show up on game day and they expect like, okay, this is the plan and this is how it's going to go accordingly and nothing is going to go wrong at all, they are very, very sadly mistaken.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of like what sets us apart because, here at Leave No Witness, what we pretty much make sure that we do is that we're setting up the players with the resources that they need
Okay.
to be as prepared on game day, right? So, not necessarily this is something we want to be even more of a standard in the esports industry, but we at Leave No Witness offer a sports psychologist to our players. We of course have, we want to get them a coach. We want to get them the resources that they need. If they want to be able to stream, then we try to make sure that they're able to have those resources, those assets, so they could take on those projects and the challenges that would come with them.
With
right?
not having to worry about all the other stuff, building the scenes. That way they can just get into streaming, which is obviously letting them, I guess, live their best life in a sense, right? Like,
Yeah, pretty much, right? So if we take Kurev, for example, Kurev, he was an absolute star player pretty much these past 2 weeks in South America.
yeah.
And Nicewig, he had a lot of really, really nice things to say about Kurev. He essentially said like this guy is like absolutely insane mechanically.
Mhm.
And Kurev, he's been super, super consistent with his streaming, and he's even been even more so consistent as a player. And so I wouldn't just say like, oh, he plays a lot, because he doesn't even necessarily do that. He won't, burn himself out with 13-hour game days. He understands the
efficient.
concept. Yeah, being efficient, understanding the concept of sorry, the I'm having a blank. He's understanding the concept of, give me 1 second
Like
here.
returns as far as like playing
Yeah,
longer.
diminishing
Diminishing
yeah,
returns?
So diminishing returns. So he's able to understand the concept of diminishing returns, where it's not worth it just playing ranked on end, because especially
Right.
in the South American region, right? The skill-based matchmaking isn't the most perfect. You get golds, you get platinums in the same lobby, and if you do get masters in the lobby, there are other people from the pro league. So I
Right.
guess in that aspect, you're able to practice team fighting to quite a bit, but you can only be so decent at the game until your brain is what's holding you back, your
Right.
thought process. So we really make sure that all the players are feeling their most comfortable, and we pretty much try to give them the resources that they need to set them up for success, right? Which is what I feel a lot of esports organizations aren't doing, right?
100%.
Because being an esports organization in a scene, in a space, is much more than just representing a logo, offering someone a salary, and then just calling it a day. It's being able to have the player grow, being able to do bigger and greater things, and building that trust, so that the people who become fans of these players are
Right.
going to be able to be like, this organization, they're doing the things right, and that's my reason to follow this esports org, right? And
Because that's duplicatable, right? It's not just because they happen to pick up an insanely cracked player.
Exactly, right? You could throw a lot of money and pick up the best squad or the best players in any region, right?
Right.
But it's not so much about having the best squad, it's about having something sustainable.
Mhm.
And with this roster, we really feel like this is something that could happen for the long term. And with our previous roster, we had been with them for 2 years, right?
Right.
For a lot of teams, they see something inconsistent after 3 weeks and they immediately make a roster change.
True.
So
Yeah, we see that a lot in the industry. That's 100% true.
for sure. For sure. You could take Aurora, for example, from EMEA. They went through 2 bad weeks of Pro League, and they already replaced somebody with Sunset.
Yeah.
And so that
A
obviously
team that was like
caught a
top
lot
5
of
in the
people on.
region, right? Like
They won EMEA.
yeah.
Right? So it's insane to me that whoever is, in Aurora making these decisions is kind of like, okay, well, I won't trust the process, and instead is trying to force something to happen, right? And I don't think that's really the mindset that lots of esports administrators should be bringing into the esports industry and just taking care of these players.
100%. Actually, I really love to hear kind of another perspective of an org that does kind of take that extra step. I actually got to sit down with Loopy last week, who's like the head of performance over for Vex, and hearing about kind of going above and beyond, because I'm sure you see the same thing. The more that you invest into the players, the return on the investment becomes exponential, right? Because it's more than just, like you said, it's more than just feeling like you're playing under a banner for winnings. You're actually like, it's the family, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, like, the banner means a little bit more, which is that, I guess, a little bit more commitment, you know what I mean? And I would love to see a lot more organizations taking it to that level for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's significantly easier if you're considered a tier 2, tier 1 organization where you have a certain amount of resources at your disposal.
Right.
But you know, Leave No Witness is still very much a startup, right? Even though we've been around for 2 years, it's one of those things where Leave No Witness has been a hobby for the longest of times. Leave No Witness is something that we've been doing, you know, because we wanted to, because we have an appreciation for it, and you know, we love the people that are in the scene. And so we had expanded to a number of different other esports. We were top 3 in Halo Infinite. We were top 4 in the VCT Game Changers in the region of Latin America. And you know, we had done a lot of things in a number of different esports. And you know, truth be told, where Leave No Witness shines is that we always make sure that we have a good work environment, and 2, we're at the top of our fields, right? But you know, there's also a certain amount of sustainability issue within the esports industry, which I feel like a lot of people are overlooking. And so
I feel like it's starting to come
they
to
don't
light
do things.
more recently, right? I guess with
They
some
are.
of the changes.
For sure. You know, more people are having the conversation about it, more people are talking about it, and that makes it so that more people are knowledgeable about it. But it's also the fact that, you know, younger demographics are becoming older, with age becomes a bit more intelligent. So they're slowly starting to catch on to these things, the difficulties and the realities of esports.
Now, John, when I did, I hate to keep referring back to when I chatted with Pocus, but he's the last one I chatted with about the region. But we kind of got to talk about, you know, some of those more about the kind of those struggles and obstacles, I guess, for players playing at that highest level, especially like the ALG type stuff from the region, right? And I think we talked, talked really at a good point of where it really starts before the players are getting ready for like trying to find a way in a challenger circuit to compete for a spot for the league, right? I know, you know, he had mentioned about the lack of kind of support as far as for him, because obviously dealing with the Portuguese region, but, you know, no Portuguese Apex page to help promote and build the space. And it seems kind of similar really throughout the region as a whole with the multiple languages. You know, obviously you get more people involved in the base game, then you can kind of let the grassroots scene kind of do its thing from there. You know, obviously on top of that, because the game that you guys play is vastly different than the ranked game, right? You can take someone that's really good at ranked and you still have to teach them how to play scrims, then play at the next level to be able to get to the ALGS like scrim lobby, right? And I know, as far as from following you over on Twitter, it's something that you're very passionate about, giving people that extra opportunity, and especially getting things moving in the right direction, I guess. I mean, heck, we even finally got to see recently something that's been missing from the scene for a while as a whole in Apex, which is the whole, like, a solid like women's scene, you know, with this whole Her Galaxy 100K open. But then you find something like that, it's region locked, you know what I mean? It almost feels like it's one of those like 5-step forward and then like 4-step back sort of situations. Doesn't it?
It really is. It really is. You know, it's nice to see, but it's very exclusive to a lot of people internationally. So it's really tough to see things look like that, because a lot of these decisions are, of course, motivated by money. You know, the reason it's region locked, you know, sponsors, they want North American demographics because that's where they have the most ad revenue. That's where they have the most disposable income. And so that's pretty much just the only reason why they make it available for North America. So
which
every
is
other
insane,
region,
thinking of how much talent there is internationally that could probably help give you a better product. You know, well, I shouldn't say probably. That would give you a better product as far as the actual tournament.
For sure, right? Talking about the women's scene specifically in Apex Legends, I find this to be like a very serious issue in the women's scene where there isn't enough consistent talent in the women's scene because I suppose the most consistent tournament in the women's scene right now is the Celestial Cup. And for
Right.
those people who know about it, they're divided into two leagues, the Soul League and then the Luna League.
Mhm.
But even within the Soul League, it's always pretty much the same 8 teams that are very, very dominant within the Celestial Cup that are always going to be the best players. And then you have people who are a notch below who, of course,
Like
are always going to be
learning and
struggling
stuff like
significant
that.
more.
Right.
Right. And it's not so much like the ALGS where, any team out of the 30 teams in every single group actually has a very significant chance of making it to that end game, winning a match, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
by suddenly cutting that, not even in half, but cutting it by 3/4,
Right.
people from EMEA, people from South America, Central America, no longer being able to play that, it's kind of like, well, damn, what,
What do we do? Yeah.
who's left, right? Who's left? Like, of course, there are going to be people who are going to be showing up, and there might be some new faces that show up, but to fill up a lobby is 60 people. You need 60 people that can put up a show because at the end of the day, esports is entertainment, and if you
Right.
can't put up an entertaining tournament, then you're definitely shooting yourself in the foot. So, um, to kind of like step back a little bit, I just find region locked tournaments to be super, super unfortunate. And, for us at Leave No Witness, we actually have the opportunity to play in esports arena.
Right.
Um, not because, not necessarily because we're a South American team, but it's more so because, people who would make exceptions, or sometimes there's not enough teams.
Right.
So, of course, Esports Arena has also done us the amazing favor of allowing us to play in their event, despite it technically being region locked during their sign up
Mhm.
pages. But it does help that Leave No Witness has a certain amount of international standing
Right.
when wanting to sign up for this event.
And of course, those reps that end up trickling down, obviously, throughout and kind of help with that overall preparation. But so I guess I'm kind of curious here, John, as someone who's not just involved in the Apex scene, but as someone that's that co-CEO role of a top team in an underrated and underrepresented region. What are some of the
Mhm.
things that like you would like to see, not only from the community, but maybe even from like EA Respawn to like kind of help close the gap, I guess to say, for some of those regions that do fall by the wayside?
Right. So I've thought about this quite a bit. And honestly, every single time I do give it thought, I come up with a different answer because there's a lot of different angles to attack this question from.
Hmm.
A lot of people it's really easy to just say, like, hey, Respawn, you don't give us enough support. But truth be told, Respawn does technically do their part by offering 5 spots to South America and
Right.
giving us a pro league, right? And they don't necessarily have to do that. They could take those 5 spots and put it somewhere else. But of course, you expect that as the bare minimum as the the developer of a game.
Yeah, but I
But
guess you could even look at, I know you were a part of Rocket League,
Mhm.
right? And we've seen as
Yeah,
newer regions kind of come up, they're not even guaranteed anything but wild card spots. You know what I mean? So like,
exactly. Exactly. It's definitely like you can make a case for and against Respawn or EA,
right.
but they do the bare minimum of the representation for our region, and from there I definitely find that to go to the next step, to pretty much go to the next level, it's of course, and to like poke his respect because he put it very, very, very well. But it's the community that needs to be able to get a little
Mm,
bit more involved. Now, you can't just say, "Oh, there's not enough community events." Given the fact that custom lobbies are now a thing, it's really
right.
easy to do community events. But to a certain degree, you also have to remember that to get competitive, you need to have a reason to be competitive for. Otherwise, it's
That's
just a
fair.
scrim. So, there needs to be prize pools, but the thing is that South America, you could very much consider it as a developing region, and it's very difficult to get sponsorships
Mm,
because there's not the ad dollars, there's not the viewership. But to get the viewership, you need to make sure that Respawn does need to promote the game.
right.
But
Marketing, which
there's
takes more
also
money, which then obviously takes money from prize pool. It's kind of like this weird circle, right?
It is a weird circle. But, also considering the fact that it's a region that's in development, it also makes it significantly harder for regular people to get into the game because it's not
Mm,
accessible, right?
right.
It's not it's a battle royale, it's a large sandbox. You have to keep in mind that, for a lot of people in Latin America where they most likely have like 970s, maybe at most a 1660,
Right.
to have a top end spec, a very well spec computer isn't a common thing. And
Right.
even much less having a computer, but having a console. And with this Pro League, we really felt that where a lot of the teams that who were previously on console suddenly just got excluded, right? They had made
Mhm.
that rule for one single competitive season where console players could play in Pro League. And we had pretty much an instance where about 8 teams of our Pro League were console players.
Really?
So yeah, a significant amount because these console players they that's what they play on and they're playing on 60 hertz, but that's that they were very,
Make it
very
work
good. They're
though,
very, very
right.
competent
Yeah,
competent.
yeah.
Exactly, right? And so it's you could call it what it is, like an easy region, an easy scene. I would, beg to differ, but the game itself isn't necessarily the most accessible.
Mhm.
But if I were to pretty much pinpoint the reason as to maybe the lack of development in our region, it's because people don't really have that hunger. What
Okay.
do I mean by that is that, you don't really have these personalities, who are making Apex Legends content. A streamer isn't the same thing as a content creator. A
Fair.
streamer is a person who presses a button and hopes that they'll be picked up by some sort of algorithm and develop a community after who knows how many years on a platform that's already incredibly saturated.
Right.
So, you know, it's also the fact that these people aren't they're not knowledgeable about these things. They're under the conviction that, what, if I just stream for long enough, I'll get enough people who watch me.
Right.
And it's not the
Everyone who
reality of it.
streams
And
thought that at some point, right? Like we've
for
all
sure.
yeah.
For sure, right? I've also had my fair share of days where I'm streaming for maybe 4 or 6 hours and I still maintain that 2 3 viewer average, and I'm just kind of like,
Is it worth it? Should I be really
well,
making some short
is
form
it, yeah,
content? Right.
for
Like
sure, right? But in my position as an owner for one of the top teams in our region, arguably, well, not even arguably, the smallest one in terms of actual size and also funding.
right.
I've had to do my fair share of homework. I need to study like social media, what the concept behind content creation, and it's definitely a whole industry that, while on the surface sounds really, really easy
Right.
because it's just uploading videos and playing games, it's
Right.
not that at all. It's not that at all. It's entertainment business,
Right.
right? And even entertainment business is still business, and there's some sort of revenue that is created somewhere. You just need to find out where to make it. So, if you don't have those personalities, these people who are developing following in the region, it's
Kind of like
really
micro
difficult.
communities essentially, right?
It pretty much, right? We Leave No Witness has its fair share of has its fair share of fans within the community, and it's most specifically within the Hispanic community
Mm.
because in SA specifically, it's really divided between Brazil and then the rest of Latin
Right.
America. But even then, it's kind of like, how can we bridge the gap? How can we maybe figure out how to have these people who, instead of just being viewers, can be creators? And that's pretty much the idea. So, I can't even provide a specific solution besides the fact that there are not enough people who are hungry for it. They don't want it
Mm.
enough. And because of the fact that they don't want it enough, they are kind of taking a step back and they're just kind of content with how things are.
Almost like
There's
that
not,
waiting for a hand instead of reaching out for a little bit further for it sort of deal.
yeah, pretty much,
Mm.
right? So it's difficult to kind of put it on one sort of spot here because you could say that it could also be a responsibility for the top orgs within the region to organize events, to organize competitive events, to maybe take the capital out of their own wallets to make these events. But you
I mean, I
know,
don't know about you, but I don't have a tree out back that my money grows on.
exactly.
So like,
Yeah, it's significantly difficult. So for Leave No Witness specifically, we had tried that a number of times previously, where we had an event in South America called the Witness Series.
mm,
Um, and so with the Witness Series, we had one $400 event and then one $1,000 event, and people were obviously very appreciative of that,
right.
but it's extremely expendable because it comes and goes. It's not something that is continuously making something, right?
Okay.
So, I think that for us, Leave No Witness, where we can best set the example and where we're doing a sort of restructuring as of this moment, is having our players be public personalities so that they can come to the front and pretty much show what content creation is. Um, while still educating these people, while still educating our players to, set a standard.
Right.
So, it's a very complex question. I'm gonna be honest, Q, but I feel like that would probably be my best answer up until now.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I think you hit on a good point. I think it's important to sometimes realize, as much as, yeah, we could get some help, sometimes it is about also putting like the best foot forward, right?
Yeah.
Now, John, I didn't bring you on here just so we can like focus on all the negatives, homie. I promise. But I do think it is
No worries.
important for people tuning in, especially, since we do watch a little bit of everywhere streams, we have a decent little, even though it's a smaller viewing over here on YouTube compared to a lot of people, but from like all across the world, right? And I mean, it takes like a hell of a lot of passion to compete at the highest level, regardless of, what region you're in or anything like that. But especially when you do have those extra obstacles sent your way that you can't control it's kind of tough, right? But one thing that the team from Leave No Witness can control is the preparation that the team puts in order to produce the best results as possible come game day, right? So we talked earlier about the squad currently sitting there in that top four. They're sitting in the top four, which does get them that automatic bid to London if things ended today, right? But if any of the three teams behind you who are also hungry, Fella goes to NorCal, teams that we know are bringing that firepower, happens to finish inside that top 5 during the first session back from break on the 15th, that essentially puts y'all in that point, right, where you're sitting on the outside looking in. But then at that point, we're at the point where you have 2 sessions left in the split, and, Leave No Witness is trying to get the comeback to make sure we get to land. What are the biggest things that you feel like for Leave No Witness to really focus on to make sure that, like, for land, when we're working through, not once we get to land, but how do we make sure that we survive what seems to be a very Ape Fest heavy kind of region? What do we got to do to make sure that our mindset and our game plan stays on point?
Yeah. So, to our detriment, when we had actually gone to London last month in February, it was, first of all, a very, very big environment change. With South America, everyone is super, super aggressive, right? And, compare that to any other region, APAC South, APAC North, EMEA, North America, people are safe. People play safe because they respect each other's distances, which isn't necessarily the case in South America, because they want to finish the fight as soon as possible so they can get armor swaps, they can play their game and get to the next one, right?
Yeah.
And, last week when we had our record 31-point game, that's pretty much what the process was. We had to go from point A, point B, and constantly moving, going on to the next. And, to adapt that for when we make playoffs, it's gonna be a shift for sure, because it's not going to be the same play style.
Right.
It's not gonna be the same conditions, and I would even argue that's pretty much the disadvantage that South America plays, because given the fact that South America specifically doesn't have the opportunity to play against other regions,
Right.
we have our own specific play style that is
It's a whole different
definitely
vibe.
like it's a whole different vibe. It's the South American play style, it's the ape play style. It's kind of like, either I kill you or you kill me, but we're going into a fight right now,
Right.
and no one's backing off of this. So when we had showed up to London, it was definitely a very, very difficult learning curve, especially since every single team, they have a scan. They have we're playing crypto, they were playing Seer, they were playing Bloodhound, and it was just one of those things where, of course, the new trend, or the trend that we've been seeing over the past 2 years, is to always have a minimum of one controller player.
Right, right,
So
right.
it's always very difficult the moment you're caught out of position, because that controller player will be very ruthless. Everyone can one clip everybody, and
Yeah.
so it's really difficult. So, you know, I remember being at London and getting back from the group stages, and I was thinking, like, we're going into losers bracket tomorrow. We had to come up with something. We had to come up with a brand new
Right.
strategy. And here's the thing: on paper, Mirage looks very good against Seer, right? And it sounds stupid to say, but Mirage, he had his ultimate,
Right.
causes a lot of decoys for any sort of Seer, and that technically nullifies the character,
Right, because
right?
you're
And for
seeing too
any
many diamonds at that point, right?
Exactly. Right? And it's not like Bloodhound, where Bloodhound, his scan shows you the outline of the character. It's just a diamond. So, we were considering Mirage, but we had pretty much opted for Maggie, Bangalore, Bloodhound for just hardcore movement.
Hmm.
Of course, our performance at land was very much, not the desired one, but it was very much indicative of, um, you know, what on the spot adaptivity does to a team. And
Mhm.
it simply took us a little bit too long for us to get some steam, because there was actually a game where we had a very, very high placement. I think we had maybe gotten in those final fights were a top 2, and so it was looking very, very good. And even Rain Day said, like, I think Leave No Witness might actually pass. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. And if you had to look at those standings for LAN, there was maybe a difference of about 5 points between 31 to 40th. So
Yeah. I think where I'm seeing here was probably that 4th place finish with 5 kills, right? In
yeah,
the lower
just about.
bracket. Yeah.
Just about, which is a significant amount of points.
Right.
So, you know, it's also what happens outside of the game. We were in a brand new country. We had absolutely no idea, you know, what we were getting into, because, I speak the language, but the players didn't necessarily speak English.
Right.
And, their worries on their mind was, are we going to be able to have a boot camp? And, what's for lunch? Right.
Right.
And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, London is very expensive, but that's like beyond the issue. But with so many teams coming in at once, boot camp places were being, you know, reserved at a moment's notice.
Right.
And so at some point we had to travel a whole hour to be able to use
Wow.
a boot camp location. So to that respect, I think it was maybe a little bit of a lack of preparation.
Okay.
Um, and it's also just like a lot of stars aligning against us, truth be told, because
I mean, battle royales,
while
unfortunately, sometimes that works, right? That's all right. That's how
for
the
sure,
cookie crumbles, unfortunately.
it really is, it really, really is. But for Latin America, even though on paper Leave No Witness is a top 5 team, I would very much argue to say that Leave No Witness is a top 2 team, because nobody takes team fights like our team.
Hmm.
We are definitely like one of the top team fighting teams within our region. We can wipe Singularity at a moment's notice. We can wipe X Godfire at a moment's notice. And, the current roster that we have and the previous roster, they're most definitely like the very, very, much more solid team fighting teams.
So it's just about
So
making sure you're focusing on the consistency, then, it really sounds like, yeah.
pretty much, right? Pretty much. We this past Saturday we had 3 wins in a row, and we still placed second place, and that's just because things slightly fell apart towards Storm Point. But
Mhm.
if anything, that just means that you know we weren't able to maintain it when it counted.
I
But
think though sometimes those situations also are good, because then when you need to make sure you stay ahead later on this season, like that
mhm,
that thought of, oh man, we were here and we kind of let our foot off the gas, like, so you don't
yeah,
this time, right?
yeah, absolutely. I feel like Singularity is actually feeling that right now, because
100%.
Singularity, they're a team that most definitely has always been on top of the leaderboards without any sort of exception, and now they're getting a significant amount of retaliation from every other team. You know, Singularity was having a significant amount of difficulty this past match date. And so I feel like for them, it was definitely like a hard hitter that people within our region are getting better. And it's a reality check, not just to Singularity, but to the rest of the regions when they do fight a South American team at LAN.
I love it. I love it. So while we're talking about focus here, just for a second, YouTube, how's your focus after long hours at the grind in front of your monitors? Whether it's grinding some ranked, staying up late to watch ALGS with your boy, or maybe you've got a different grind that keeps you in front of screens all day. Gamer Advantage is the leader in impactful eyewear technology that has been proven to help you sleep better, focus more, all without distorting color or comfort, relieving headaches and eye strain, all while fitting comfortably under a headset. Stay in the game longer with Gamer Advantage. Y'all know I tend to let Gamer Advantage sit on my face all day, day, and it's not just because they help me look good. You know what I'm saying? Although they do help me look good. But as someone who's like really suffered from migraines my whole life and has a pretty wacky work and sleep schedule thanks to my casting schedule kind of being literally global, they've honestly been a life changer. I'm telling you. So link is always going to be down in that description below. Don't forget code YoBoyCue at checkout saves you that 10%. All right. But John, I'm going to try not to take too much more of your time, my friend. I know when I get the opportunity to sit down with players, coaches, executives like you, I know y'all are busy, right? But you had mentioned earlier in our chat here, you mentioned as far as not only what this roster needs to do, but the fact that y'all went through a roster change heading into the split, right? And I'm sure that process of releasing players in order to try and improve like the org's chances of competing at the highest levels, like that can't be easy, right? But obviously, at the end of the day, it is a business decision. I'm kind of curious, what's that process kind of look like as far as overseeing a roster, and especially in this case, kind of making the decision to kind of go with the full roster change? Because I know, like you had mentioned, maybe hadn't seen the best performance, but y'all still were just at LAN, right? So what were some of the things that you looked for, I guess, when it came to picking up this new roster? I know Pyrrhus has had some experience, obviously, with the org in the past, but what were some of the things that you were really looking for? What made you like so confident about picking this team up?
So honestly, it very much was a difficult decision going through an entire roster change. You know, a lot of people think this could be just like business motivated decisions, but honestly, with that roster specifically, it was much more than that. They were quite literally family to me. Younger brothers, you know, when I found Rena, Tricky, and Panic, they were 15 and 16 years old. They had quite literally been with us for about a year and, basically 2 years at that point. So it very much hurt. It was not an easy decision, and of course, a lot of tears were shed because, again, it's not about the brand at that point; it's about family, and so it just really, really hurt on all sides, right? But what a lot of the influencing factors were the fact that, you know, I myself being of Hispanic descent, I needed to feel like I'm, helping Hispanics in the region and, giving them that hope of being like as good, if not better than the Brazilian teams. And, the Brazilian teams have pretty much always been a significant powerhouse
That's fair.
within the region. And so, I need to say like, hey, even though Leave No Witness let go of the roster, don't worry, we're back. Right. And we're back and we're going to be better and we're going to be doing better, more things. And we're going to show you that the Leave No Witness that we were last month isn't the same as before. So, with all that being said, a lot of the influencing factors was that we needed somebody that we could trust, and we needed people that, you know, fit the Leave No Witness image. I myself go through a very, very, very extensive like interview process whenever I want to bring on a brand new roster, and this could go for any other game. And I need to make sure that the people who are wanting to join Leave No Witness aren't just doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it for the reasons that, they want to turn this into their career. And that hunger, that want, that need, I want to develop. And so, initially when I had brought in Rena, Panic, and Pyrrhus as the original squad, it was very difficult to convince their parents because, gaming in Latin America just isn't part of the hustle mindset that is in Latin America. So, first of all, we need to tell them like, hey, there's going to be a way for them to make some income. So we need to show the parents like, hey, we will support your child throughout this
Monetarily.
process.
Right.
Exactly. right? Because otherwise, Rena and Panic would not have honed their skills to be top players within the region. Purists would not have been able to do that. And, for a lot of these other players that are doing it without monetary aid or compensation, like, honestly, kudos to them,
Yeah.
because, I would not have been able to commit myself to the highest level of play for the longest time without any sort of support from other people.
Right.
At some point, you kind of need someone to believe in you, and if you don't believe in yourself, it's going to be really easy to let that up.
Okay. Okay. Now, John, I am kind of hoping that having talked about the South American scene a little bit more today, that we've been able to give kind of some of that perspective for our viewers from the outside of the region, kind of looking in,
Yeah.
but also for people who are listening and made it thus far. I know I kind of want to also talk one last thing here. I know you wrote out a pretty good thread here. I think it's like a couple weeks ago. I would like to kind of give you the thread to kind of talk about for some of our ambitious gamers who are maybe in the region, again, that have stuck out this far. We'll kind of talk about what are some of the things that South American pro prospects should be doing? What are some of the things that they need to be like? What are some of the steps they need to be doing to try to garner that attention and then that commitment from an org? Because I know, obviously you can only employ so many players, right? But you also have that motivation that you talked about, wanting to give people that opportunity. So let's say I'm a super cracked out Apex gamer. Again, let's make pretend, because I'm far from that. Those who can't shoutcast or whatever they say. But if I'm trying to make that jump and land on an org, right? What are some of the best pieces of advice that you can give me?
So, truth be told, being part of an organization isn't about the paycheck, because honestly, for a lot of these startup organizations, they can't offer that to you.
Right.
What they can offer is some sort of alternative support that would be able to help your personal brand, and in turn be able to support the organization's brand, right? And so for a lot of these free agent players are going about it in an absolutely awful way, because they trust the power of social media so much. But the thing is that given the competitive space is such a tight-knit group of friends,
Right.
their posts, their publications, they're pretty much like cries for help aren't really being put in front of the right eyes,
The
right?
wrong people
For
are seeing the
anyone,
looking for org posts, essentially, right?
exactly. Exactly. If we put it on Twitter, the only way you would see these posts is if you follow somebody who liked the post, or if it's just recommended to you through luck out of the algorithm.
Right.
And for these people who are in administrative positions in esports, there's such a select few amount of people to get in front of the right eye is honestly being extremely optimistic at best.
Right.
So what I recommend for free agent players is, develop your skills professionally and be able to make a presentation. Who are you? What have you done? What are you trying to do? And this is what I want from a very beginning. And can we build up to this next step? With our rosters, we obviously weren't giving them pro player salaries at the beginning. We
Right.
were giving them something that would be able to motivate them to do more, right? And a lot of organizations aren't even going to offer monetary compensation at the beginning. They're just trying to figure out, how can my brand become bigger, and how can I do this with them, right? I feel like there's a very, very big stigma against organizations, especially with recent times, with what's happening with all these crypto scams and all of
True.
these
Yeah.
big affiliations and all this whatnot that kind of dehumanizes organizations. But there's always people behind these organizations that are working on these projects, and so we care just as much about the players as some of their own family or their friends or their parents, right? Because we genuinely put the trust to have them represent our name. It's almost as if you got married with a person and you gave them their last name, right?
Right,
It's kind of
right,
like, I want you to have my last name. So it's kind of one of those things where all these players that are making free agent posts on the internet, they're just falling upon deaf ears. So I would say, like, hey, learn how to make a presentation, open up Photoshop, download cracked Photoshop. Who do you care? Like,
Right.
do something that will allow you to get in front of the right eyes, because there's a very, very big difference between just sending an email or even a Twitter DM saying, "Hey, I'm looking for an org. Can you hook me up?"
Yeah. Okay.
So
Can you pay me, bro? Like.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, no, but thank you for asking. So it's kind of like, you know, at the very least, what I expect personally when I'm not doing the scouting and I have someone who's coming up to me, I'm expecting, like, maybe a presentation. What have you done? What are you interested in? What is the drive? What is your team? What are you bringing to the table? Because truth be told, we're not in 2008 anymore. We're not in
Right.
2009 anymore, where you know it's not good enough to be good at the game anymore. You need to have a brand, a a personal brand that you can call your own, that you can then borrow to your organization. Take XQC. He was a part of Luminosity for the longest time. Of
Right.
course, his brand is is at a level where he doesn't need Luminosity anymore.
Right.
But you know it's one of those things where Luminosity, they saw merit in being able to keep him as part of their ranks. Um, Now, if you do that on a much smaller scale, what orgs are still bringing to the table is resources and connections. If you're wanting to get an invitation to PAX East, DreamHack, for example, you could say, like, or even just like, for a lot of organizations, they function as talent agencies, bringing sponsors to this creator.
Right.
You could use 100 Thieves as an example, right? So, ultimately, a lot of esports orgs want to do this with you and for you, but we don't see a reason why. So why
If you
should
don't
we?
go that extra step, 100%, that makes
Exactly.
so much sense. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I would really just say, like, take a step back. Don't focus on having an organization, but focusing on why you want an organization.
Mm.
Because if you want to be something after your pro player career ends, then it most likely is in the entertainment industry.
Right.
So, Shroud did it. Of course, XQC did it because he was a pro Overwatch player.
Mhm.
Tens, he's still an active competitor, but I think most people know him as an entertainment, as a public personality. You get a lot of
Scump, I guess you could even say the same
personalities like
thing
this.
recently.
Yeah, Scump,
Yeah.
absolutely. He retired, but he still remains. If not, he's even more popular than
I
before,
would say
because now
probably more popular.
he's not
Yeah.
he's not restricted anymore. He doesn't have
Yeah.
to play the same game.
True.
So, it's something that's in the long run, and for a lot of these esports organizations, of course, it's a minuscule amount that are going to be doing things the right way.
Mhm.
But you have to communicate with people. You have to understand where other people are coming from, so you can also work together to go in a certain direction.
Gotcha. Well, John, thank you so much for your time, man. I know you're an extremely busy person, not just with Apex and what you've got obviously going on with Leave No Witness, but your time doing things even outside of that, right? But for people wanting to keep up with you and like your organization come game day, like where can they keep up with all that?
So, of course, I have to plug Leave No Witness, the most important thing, because that's my pride and soul. But, underscore Leave No Witness on Twitter, Leave No Witness Gaming on Instagram. But for people who want to know me a little bit more personally, it would actually be PB underscore N underscore John. It's a really, really bad joke on a PB and J sandwich, but it's what I love in life. So, PB underscore N underscore John on pretty much every single social. For the people who want to follow me on LinkedIn, it would be John Fernando Hoyos Tobar, Hoyostobar. So yeah, that's pretty much Leave No Witness. That's what I do, and this is what I want to commit myself to. I'm going to start university next month, actually next week, in game business and esports, because I want this to be my career.
Absolutely legendary, homie. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I know I'm definitely going to be trying to find my way over to London for the playoffs. I'm sure y'all are going to be over there. So if I find my way over there, we'll definitely have to link up and say what's up as far as in person. But good luck for the rest of the split, man. And I definitely hope to catch y'all at playoffs.
Awesome. Thank you, Q. Appreciate it.
All right, chat. Well, we're already gonna go ahead and wrap up out of here, man. I know y'all are already wanting to head on to the next thing, but we do have a break on ALGS here for I think it's like 2 weeks here. But it doesn't mean we're done over here on the channel. As I was actually doing today, we also watch a lot of VCT, so feel free to pull up, hang out, and see what's going on. It's the start of the new VCT season, or if you just want to find a new place to hang out and kick it to keep up with like Apex news, updates, interviews, just like this, feel free to smack that subscribe button and turn those notifications on. All right. But most importantly, we've been really crushing over here on the channel, and that's all thanks to you guys, man. So do me a favor, type something down there in the comments. Let me know maybe someone y'all want me to chat with next, your favorite part of this interview, and also make sure you hit that like button. Those 2 things help me the most as far as the algorithm and trying to get my content in front of more people. All right. But until we catch y'all back over here for the next one or the next watch party, don't forget, man, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere, game hard and love harder. All right, y'all, that's John, I'm Q, signing out.
If you ain't show something, you just don't wanna be. You wanna be me, but you will never be as fresh as CUE.